A good rule of thumb to remember, the mainstream media, they are almost always wrong about this guy. Do we have to go through it again? They were wrong when they told us he wouldn't run for president, that he wouldn't be the nominee, couldn't beat Hillary. Then they told us he colluded with Russia and that Joe Biden would win by a landslide. And now they're telling us that he is fighting against democracy. It is literally the opposite. He is fulfilling his duty, the oath he swore. He is defending the Constitution. I'll tell you how in just a moment. Meanwhile, these folks, the media, they are out for themselves. They are fighting for their livelihoods. They are fighting for their egos. Because if they get this wrong again, I mean, really, after being wrong so many episodes, I mean, even people who agree with him ideologically will be like, what do we need these people for anymore? I mean, they are always wrong. All right, so what are they telling us lately? All together, actually, they all seem to be on the same page that Donald Trump is fighting against democracy. The Sunday shows.
This Sunday, the threat to democracy. President Trump and his allies making baseless and dangerous claims about non-existent voter fraud.
Defying democracy.
He will go down in history as being one of the most irresponsible presidents in American history.
Trump falsely cries voter fraud.
President Trump goes to unprecedented lengths in his election fight. Is the president damaging democracy?
Democracy is just fine. In fact, everything the president is doing is just A-OK in our democracy handbook, the Constitution. But on cable TV, especially liberal cable TV, they got even looser in saying how dangerous this president is to all of us.
This is deeply un-American. And it's an un-American, unpatriotic attack that's being performed right now by a handful of vile political operatives who are trying desperately every day to carry out a coup. Look up the definition. A coup that would overthrow the presidency of a democratically elected leader who received over 300 electoral votes and got the support of 80 million Americans.
Joe, we know what a coup means, but everything else you said there, very suspect, especially, quite frankly, on a common sense level. Joe Biden getting more votes than any presidential candidate in the history of this country. The same guy who literally could not fill a parking lot. There's something just viscerally not right about that. I feel, and I'm not alone. Now, regarding the Constitution, again, I looked it up. You can too for 99 cents on Kindle. It's available to everybody. And granted, I don't know it by heart, but this is Article 2, the executive branch. You go through this stuff. They talk about the Electoral College. They don't talk about anything that the president is doing right now as being unconstitutional. You can also go to the 12th Amendment. More details there. Really, the big thing is a Electoral College. There are provisions in here for it to be contested. It does get a little bit complicated, and we are not even close to being at that point. Everything the president is doing is well within the bounds of democracy. This is no threat. This is, again, the mainstream media engaging in exaggeration, hyperbole, and we know them long enough where we all know they do that, right? They try to make you scared. That's how they make money. Meanwhile, I think we should talk a little bit about Sidney Powell, great lawyer, former federal prosecutor. Seems like she is officially off the presidential team of lawyers. I'm not sure if she was ever officially on the presidential team. They're trying to make a big deal out of that. I think it's just fine. Here's the thing to consider. Imagine this. You're at work, your job, and you have a really hard job to do. We've all had a crisis or two at work. And let's say you add into that, you don't get along with your colleagues, or maybe your boss is a little bit crazy and you got problems at home. And oh, by the way, the entire media world are pressuring you. People like Tucker Carlson are badgering you on and off the air. That could get to anybody. So whatever friction is on that team, I think it's fine. By the way, the issues that she's trying to come to terms with, I know everybody wants to see the evidence. Let's see the evidence. Show me the evidence. Again, they don't go out and look for it. Journalists, mainstream media, they just want these lawyers to do the work for them. Well, if you take a look at it, and if you start going into the affidavits, and if you start going into the technical aspects of all of this, it's very complicated. We should point out, by the way, you see these headlines? That's all pre-election. Now, before the election, there were all kinds of stories about our voting systems being at risk. You see the Hill there. Voting machines pose a greater threat to our elections than foreign agents. That's from over a year ago. Washington Post, lower left. As Georgia rolls out new voting machines for 2020, worries about election security persist. Associated Press, election integrity in hands of companies with security problems. Those are all pretty reputable news organizations, at least for the mainstream, right? Now, what happened? We had an election, and they suddenly dropped all of those concerns. Why? Well, because their favorite candidate won the election. It's pretty simple, actually. You know, sometimes they accuse the right-wing media, if you will, of choosing their own reality in which to live. It's not true. We confront reality. They're the ones who ignore vast portions of day-to-day facts, like Hunter Biden, by the way. Hunter Biden. I mean, I think this is a low point that maybe historians ultimately will be able to effectively call them out. We've been making the case, but they go right on shamelessly. They ignored this guy for, what, a year and a half. They did not press the president about that laptop. They did not press the president-elect, or Joe Biden, Vice President Biden, I should say. You hear it a million times a day. It does seep in sometimes. But they badgered anybody who raised questions about Hunter Biden. And we all know there are serious questions to be raised about him. How about this? So they ignored that, and they totally embraced the Russia hoax.
Breaking news tonight. The Justice Department is appointing a special counsel to take over the Trump campaign Russia investigation. Stunning news as we come on the air. We have all the developing details.
You see, they embrace news that they think hurts President Trump, and they ignore news that might hurt Joe Biden or possibly help Donald Trump. And by the way, here at Newsmax, by the way, I don't ignore stories that might be damaging to President Trump. Hey, I love the guy, but let's face it, sometimes he throws you a curveball or two. Remember the Mary Trump book? We didn't pretend that did not exist. The Mary Trump book came out. I read it. There I am talking about it. We did about 3 shows on it. I thought that she was full of nonsense, by the way. The whole idea of a future president taking a test when he was 18 years old and telling his unborn niece about cheating on it. I didn't buy it, but we didn't ignore it. We confronted it. The left, they confront stories that they think might hurt their side. Very, very interesting. In the meantime, they are convinced of their righteousness, of their importance. They have such reverence for themselves, the mainstream media. And again, right now, they're fighting for their lives. But I think this is kind of interesting. Just gives you an idea of the kind of high regard they hold themselves in. The Newseum. Do you remember the Newseum? It was this massive complex, museum on Pennsylvania Avenue. It was absurdly big, absurdly expensive, and the people were absurdly impressed with themselves. Those living and, quite frankly, dead who were celebrated in the halls of the Newseum. Now, Tim Russert, I liked him a lot, actually. I met him several times. Down-to-earth, regular guy. I think he would have been embarrassed to find out that after his death, they took his desk, the one that he used at NBC News, and they put it on display in the Newseum. I mean, that's just a little bit too much, isn't it? Doesn't that? Again, this is how important, not Tim Russert thought, but others in his industry think they are. This was also a moment, gosh, I saw it on Friday. Kayleigh McEnany, who every day is abused by the mainstream media. CNN's Caitlin Collins always gives her a hard time. I think she's something of a mean girl, quite frankly. Anyway, this happened, and they traded some barbs.
Thank you, everyone, for the very good and substantive questions today.
Do you understand that you lost?
I don't call an activist.
I'm not an activist, and you've been taking questions since October 1st, and you just took about 5.
Okay. Caitlin Collins asked a question. I don't call on activists. Now, I've heard Caitlin Collins be really, really nasty to Kayleigh McEnany. So the entire press corps ran to the defense of Caitlin Collins. You heard she just said, I don't talk to activists. What did her, I don't know, not her boss, but the show she reports for, Jake Tapper, take a look at what happened a few hours later.
I just want to say you got attacked from the podium today unfairly and unprofessionally. And I just want to note, you're one of the best White House correspondents ever in the history of this country. You do a fantastic job, and we're very lucky to have you. And we are all 100% behind you. So thanks for that report, and thanks for the job you do.
Thank you for saying that.
In the history of this country, and we are all behind you. It sounds like they're going to have a candlelight vigil. Somebody called her an activist. I mean, I got called names 3 times today on my way to work, and this is a moment for them. They are so full of themselves. Here's the deal. If you really want to understand how the media operate, there's such conformity in their ranks. I like to go to The Simpsons, actually, for a lot of insight into a lot of different issues. They're talking about problems that Bart Simpson is having in the playground, but when Homer weighs in, these rules also apply to the mainstream media.
The code of the schoolyard, Marge. The rules that teach a boy to be a man. Let's see. Don't tattle. Always make fun of those different from you. Never say anything unless you're sure everyone feels exactly the same way you do. And what else?
Oh, Homer, that's ridiculous.
But not ridiculous for the media, especially that last part. Never say anything unless you're sure that everyone agrees with you. The conformity that we're seeing right now is actually really, really sad. It used to be an adventure opening the newspaper. You would be challenged and intrigued, but now just conformity and indoctrination. All right, I think we should weigh in with hear from what the Biden folks are doing. Again, he's not president-elect. There is no constitutional provision at this point that would have triggered that designation. So this is kind of like pretend, but they are announcing who they want in the cabinet. And they're doing it with these kind of hokey videos. Hokey, in my opinion. You tell me what you think.
I am the son of refugees.
Among my parents and their parents are immigrants, refugees, a Holocaust survivor.
I believe we can make meaningful change through public service.
I'm returning to government to help solve the climate crisis.
Whoa. All right. Now, this is one of the many, many, many reasons I'm really hoping that Donald Trump can pull this off and stay in office for another 4 years. We don't need this guy hanging around. He says they need him to solve the climate change crisis. John Kerry's going to solve that. Here's what I think is really happening with John Kerry. He's sick of hanging around the house. Look, getting on and off of airplanes when you're a VIP, that's fun. And I think John Kerry misses that. I don't think he likes waiting online at the airport. And quite frankly, I think he's ready to get out of the house. This was in the Boston Globe recently. This is what his life looks like now. Take another look at what his life looked like a couple of years ago. And if things go Joe Biden's way, what they'll look like in the future, yeah, you can see why he might want this job. I don't think it's going to happen, John Kerry. Sorry about that.